Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. A small town nestled amidst the hills of Virginia, Ravenswood exuded a charm that belied the darkness lurking beneath its surface. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows along the narrow streets, while a heavy fog rolled in from the nearby river. The buildings, nearly all historic and rich in character, stood silently as if holding their breath, waiting for the inevitable revelation of secrets long concealed. The streets were eerily quiet, save for the occasional creak of an old sign swaying in the soft breeze. It was the kind of night when the distant sound of a train whistle echoed, like a specter haunting the rail yards. A reminder that beyond Ravenswood, life continued for the rest of the world. But within the town's bounds, a gathering storm brewed. It had started with the kind of whispers one might expect, unintentional mischief and petty disagreements that evolved into something more sinister. But the heart of the matter came to a boil one autumn evening when Emily Calloway, a local schoolteacher, vanished without a trace. Her disappearance marked the beginning of a search that would unravel the lives of those who knew her and exposed the gritty truth woven into the fabric of Ravenswood. As the first flakes of winter began to fall, a palpable tension filled the air. The town would face a reckoning, and nothing would remain untouched. The victim, Emily Calloway, was well liked in Ravenswood, known for her warm smile and dedication to her students. A beacon of positivity in the community, she had been teaching third grade at the local elementary school for over 5 years. Her modest home, an inviting two-story structure painted a faded blue, was always filled with laughter and the smell of freshly baked cookies. Late afternoons often found her sitting on the porch reading to neighborhood kids, while the sound of their delighted giggles floated through the air. Friends described Emily as a spirited soul who cherished her job and the bonds she forged with her students. She immersed herself in their lives, offering support both in and out of the classroom. It was no secret that she had a deep empathy for others, stemming from her own troubled past. Having grown up in foster care, she understood the importance of a kind word and a guiding hand. Ravenswood was her sanctuary, a fresh start where she could build the family she'd only ever dreamed of. But even in the most familiar places, darkness can simmer beneath the surface. Despite her cheerful disposition, Emily had her secrets, fragments of a life that could sometimes feel overwhelming. Friends knew she had experienced heartbreak after a recent engagement turned toxic. They saw the stress etched on her face during chance encounters. Yet she always brushed off their concerns with a wave and a smile, assuring them she was fine. It was on a chilly Friday evening that Emily's life would abruptly change, leaving a chasm in the community that nothing could fill. When she failed to show up for class the following Monday, alarm bells chimed and whispers fluttered through Ravenswood, hinting at deeper troubles that had been hiding in plain sight. The crime scene. The day after Emily Calloway's disappearance, local authorities sprang into action, mobilizing search teams and volunteers from the tight-knit community. As the early morning sun struggled to break through a thick blanket of clouds, the atmosphere felt tense, laden with unwelcome anticipation. The swaying trees whispered secrets that only a few would glean. Something was terribly wrong. Search parties began at Emily's home, which soon transformed into a hive of activity. Deputies moved methodically through the house, documenting every corner. Piece of furniture. Her cozy living room, decorated with children's art and framed photos of her students, bore the unmistakable mark of a life full of love and laughter, now cast into uncertainty. Yet it was the kitchen where the police found their first clue. On the table, a half-finished cup of tea stood as if she had just stepped away an ordinary moment, interrupted by the extraordinary. Investigators noted her cell phone plugged into the wall. The screen dimmed, suggesting she had not intended to wander far. It was a small detail, but one that hinted at the suddenness of her absence. As officers ventured outside, they moved cautiously among the towering oak trees that flanked the property like sentinels. The yard, once alive with children and laughter, now felt imbued with an eerie silence. Ground searches revealed footprints leading away from the house, a disturbing sight on the dewy grass. The team marked off a perimeter, focusing on the woods behind Emily's home, kind of dense forests, where secrets could easily be swallowed whole. The distant sound of rustling leaves mingled with hushed conversations among the search party. All around, the shadows deepened, darkening the hearts of those searching for answers. The early investigation. As the search for Emily Calloway began to stretch into its second day, the atmosphere in Ravenswood grew heavier. Investigative teams combed the woods surrounding her home, guided by the unshakable hope that they would find her safe and sound. However, as hours turned into days, that hope began to fray at the edges, giving way to a shadow of despair. It was within this crucible of uncertainty that investigators began uncovering the intricate tapestry of Emily's life threads that could lead them closer to unearthing the truth. Detective Mark Lawson, a seasoned investigator known for his tenacity, took the lead on the case. He gathered Emily's friends and family for questioning, their faces painted with anxiety as they lamented her absence. Each interview added layers to the emerging narrative. Emily's colleagues spoke of her passionate dedication, while an ex-boyfriend recounted their tumultuous relationship. As the stories unfolded, buried emotions surfaced: love, jealousy, and heartache, complicating a picture that was becoming increasingly murky. Lawson couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental lay just beneath the surface of the mundane. He began poring over Emily's social media profiles, extracting connections she had fostered through her vibrant presence online. Photographs showcased her doing charitable work, but they also captured interactions with enigmatic figures, friends, and acquaintances whose motivations remained questionable. Each revelation only drove home the stakes of the investigation. With no leads, no signs of struggle, and no ransom notes, the case was all the more confounding. The detective's intuition urged him to look deeper, to consider the possibility that Emily's disappearance was not an isolated incident, but rather a constellation of influences spiraling out of control, leading to a tragic culmination. As twilight fell and darkness pooled in the corners of the town, the heavy weight of uncertainty was met with the resolve of the local community, now united in a singular pursuit: finding Emily Calloway, no matter the cost. No matter the cost. The dead ends. The days dragged on, stretching into a painstaking week as hope dwindled in Ravenswood. Sporadic search efforts yielded no results, and the initial fervor from the community began to cool, replaced by a deepening frustration that settled like lead in their hearts. Detective Lawson found himself standing at the intersection of determination and despair. Every path he pursued bore the weight of dead ends. As Lawson reviewed Emily's texts, he stumbled across several unsettling messages that hinted at her internal struggle. Snippets of conversations revealed her grappling with loneliness, the pressures of being a teacher, and anxiety over her rocky relationship with her former fiancé, Jake. Their last argument had erupted just days before her disappearance, with accusations thrown like daggers. Lawson knew he needed to speak with Jake, but a preliminary chat with mutual friends revealed he had abruptly left town after the incident. Disheartened, Lawson shifted his focus onto Emily's social media friendships. A few acquaintances revealed her connection with an online support group for troubled youths, showing that she was always seeking to help others even when she battled her demon. When questioned, several group members remarked about her kindness but reported no direct contact in the days leading up to her vanishing. It was another cul-de-sac in the maze he was navigating, each inquiry peeling back layers yet uncovering little to illuminate her fate. Amid the long hours and empty leads, Lawson confronted public scrutiny. The tireless work of the investigation faced increasing impatience from the town. Rumors began to swirl, some questioning law enforcement's competence, while others cast blame on Emily herself for leading a reckless life. Through it all, he held tight to a flickering flame of determination, pushing against the tide of discontent that rose around him. In the quiet moments that followed each fruitless day, he returned to Emily's last known whereabouts, haunted by the realization that the key to unraveling this mystery was lurking somewhere, just beyond his grasp. A break in the case. After a week of relentless searching, a small breakthrough finally emerged. It came on a dreary Tuesday afternoon when Lawson received a tip from an unexpected source, a local teenager who claimed to have seen Emily the night she vanished. The boy lived near the school, and while walking home from a friend's house, he noticed a strange car parked along the country road that bordered the woods behind Emily's home. Intrigued, Lawson arranged to meet him at the diner that served as the town's unofficial hub. The boy, a wiry 14-year-old named Sam, recounted the details with a youthful mixture of excitement and fear. He described a dark SUV, one he hadn't recognized before, parked for a long stretch. He recounted vague silhouettes moving within the vehicle, shadows that flickered in the ambient light from the street lamp. With this new piece of information, Lawson's pulse quickened, a rare flicker of anticipation shedding light on the heavy darkness that had cloaked the town for far too long. He delved into the records, seeking any clues about the SUV license plates, ownership, or prior incidents. As he connected the dots, the tension around the diner ebbed slightly, holding a breath of cautious optimism. In tandem, the detective called in the local forensics team to scour the area where Sam had seen the vehicle. Weathered grass, once evidently trampled, was now somewhat restored, its dewy blades barely yielding to the persistent chill in the air. Late that evening, while meticulously examining the scene alongside the detectives, a forensic officer noticed something glinting just off the roadway, a small charm bracelet adorned with colorful beads that seemed out of place among the fallen leaves. Recognizing it as a piece often worn by Emily, Lawson's heart raced. He held it delicately between his fingers, every detail etched in his mind that tied it directly to her. The stakes had suddenly changed. He now had tangible evidence of Emily's last known interaction. Lawson felt a surge of determination, fueled by the knowledge that they were one step closer to untangling the web of secrets that engulfed her disappearance. The town held their breath, the murky shadows of doubt slowly began to lift. The suspect. As the investigation intensified, the discovery of Emily's bracelet served as a catalyst for action. The charm gleamed under the forensic lights, solidifying the belief that someone close to her had likely played a role in her disappearance. Detective Lawson's focus shifted to the dark SUV described by the witness, and he enlisted the help of the local auto shop owner, who had a detailed knowledge of every vehicle in the area. 2 days later, an anonymous tip came through. Someone had seen a similar vehicle parked outside the town's bar, known for being a hangout for locals, but also for its undercurrent of trouble. It was here that Lawson's investigation led to an unexpected and troubling suspect. Jake Harlan, Emily's ex-fiancé. Jake had returned to Ravenswood days after Emily's disappearance, sowing discord among her friends and stirring rumors. His tattoos, outspoken demeanor, and known history of aggressive behavior painted him as a complex puzzle. Friends described him as charming, but those who knew Emily well warned of his darker impulses, jealous outbursts over small things that had escalated during their tumultuous relationship. Lawson couldn't ignore the mounting circumstantial evidence. Property records confirmed Jake had access to a vehicle matching the mysterious SUV description, and his alibi for the night of Emily's disappearance was riddled with holes. As he pieced together the timeline, it became apparent that Jake had been in town when Emily vanished, his whereabouts unaccounted for during key hours. Determined to approach this emotionally charged lead carefully, Lawson organized an interrogation. The conversation felt electric, laden with tensions as they moved between probing questions and evasive answers. Jake's bravado became increasingly fragile as Lawson pushed. He unraveled. Each denial felt more forced, each deflection more desperate. The detective pressed harder for answers, holding tight to the conviction that he was on the verge of unveiling the truth. As the dim light of dusk seeped into the interrogation room, he laid out the bracelet, the testimonies, the circumstantial evidence. Jake's demeanor shifted. The confident bravado began to crack under pressure, exposing fissures in the carefully constructed facade. This could be the break that changed everything. The trial. As summer melted into fall, the sleepy town of Ravenswood found itself thrust into the glaring spotlight of the media frenzy surrounding the trial of Jake Harlan. The courtroom, a charming yet austere building adorned with aged wood and faded paint, buzzed with anticipation. Residents filled the benches, straining to catch a glimpse of the man accused of kidnapping Emily Calloway and possibly worse. The proceedings unfolded with a chilling rhythm. The prosecution painted a picture of a spurned man, consumed by jealousy and rage, who lost control when Emily sought to break free from his grasp. Key witnesses took the stand, each one weaving a tapestry of evidence that placed Jake in the center of a storm. Friends detailed his possessive outbursts, while the forensics team testified about the bracelet's significance found near the woods, placing Emily's last known movements perilously close to the defense. The defense, relentless in their approach, presented an alternative narrative. They painted Emily as someone who led a life fraught with complications, alluding to her struggles and hinting that her choices could have driven her into dangerous territory. Suggestions were made that others could have been involved, leaning into the darkness of the woods behind her home. Lawson sat in the back of the courtroom, his heart heavy with a mix of anger and sadness at the portrayal of a woman he had worked tirelessly to find. For him, Emily was not just a missing person. She represented hope, the good in a community grappling with the shadows that lurked beyond the facade of small-town charm. As days turned into weeks, Emotions flare. Community members openly debated in hushed tones, fostering division and deepening the rifts that had formed since Emily's disappearance. While deliberations stretched on, a jury slowly began to dissect the evidence, lingering over the questions that had fueled the investigation from the start. Was Jake a victim of circumstance, or an embodiment of darkness unleashed? With every passing hour, the weight of the decision loomed larger. As the verdict drew nearer, a hush fell over Ravenswood hopes, rising and falling like fragile leaves caught in the biting autumn wind. The aftermath. The gavel pounded down, and silence enveloped the courtroom like a shroud. As the jury reached their unanimous verdict, the tension felt palpable, thick enough to cut through the air. For Jake Harlan, the accusations had finally culminated in a fierce reckoning. When the words "guilty" echoed through the vastness of the chamber, a collective gasp rose from the crowd. Emotions surged, a union of relief and sorrow as justice, imperfect but present, claimed its space in the troubled narrative of Emily Calloway's disappearance. In the wake of the trial, the aftermath unfurled like the slow embrace of winter. The town emerged battered but steadfast. Murmurs rippled through Ravenswood, where daily routines resumed under the veneer of normalcy. The schoolteacher's empty desk was a haunting reminder of what had been lost, a vacuum that could not be filled. Memorials sprung up, community gatherings held in her honor, but an insatiable sadness lingered in the air, echoing a sense of unresolved grief. For Detective Lawson, the victory felt bittersweet. He had fought hard, but knew it came at the cost of lives forever altered. He stood on the porch of Emily's home, now a gathering place for her friends and family, navigating the complex layers of loss. Tears mingled with laughter as shared memories emerged, a bittersweet tapestry woven from the threads of joy and sorrow. The aftermath brought its own challenges. Tension simmered between community members who had taken sides during the trial, leaving lingering divisions that would take time to heal. Old friendships were strained, new alliances formed, and the town's fabric bore scars that would not quickly fade. As autumn deepened and the leaves began to fall, the search for Emily turned inward. Many grappled with their own demons, confronting the stark truth that the darkness they had feared was always closer than they had realized. Lawson, too, faced his own reckoning. He could no longer compartmentalize the harsh reality of a town changed by loss. While the stories of Emily and Jake would remain part of Ravenswood's narrative, the lessons learned loomed large. In their aftermath, an opportunity for healing, connection, and unity, forged in the face of tragedy, emerged, urging the townsfolk to understand that there were still reasons to hope. Reflection. As winter began to blanket Ravenswood in a mantle of white, the town found itself trudging through a season of reflection. The snow-covered streets were silent, a stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded just months prior. Detective Lawson stood at the edge of the woods where Emily Calloway had once played, the weight of each step pressing heavily upon him, a reminder of the lives intertwined in tragedy. Days melted into weeks, and the community grappled with its identity post-trial. Healing was not a straight path. It meandered through grief, anger, and moments of shared laughter that cracked the cold web of despair. Lawson often visited the memorial for Emily, now marked by small tokens left by the townspeople, photos, notes, and flowers, remnants of love that honored a life forever altered. Conversations filled with hushed tones circulated in local cafes, with stories of Emily's teaching, her goodness, and her unyielding spirit dominating discussions. Yet, behind the comforting facade of shared memories, painful undercurrents persisted. Questions of choice, responsibility, and community accountability were debated long into the nights. As Lawson reflected on the case that had consumed him, he understood that justice was not a single victory. It lived within every person Emily had touched, urging compassion in a world often shadowed by darkness. The comforts of familiarity were now interwoven with lessons learned, and he stood resolute, acknowledging Ravenswood's capacity for resilience. In this season of reflection, he recognized that true strength lies in the ability to confront the past, embrace vulnerability, and lean on each other, forging connections that would endure long after the darkness fades.